I am looking into the mystery of how to find clients. Andy, you know how to find clients. In fact, you tell me that there are 5 detective skills that I should know about for networking. What are they?
Nancy, I do there. That's great. And I'd like to start with the mistake everyone makes and the thing everyone thinks about when they go to networking events. And of course, everyone goes to a networking event to sell. That's why we're there, to sell. And just think about what everyone else is there to do. They're also there to sell. And so the first skill that we talk about when we're talking about being a referral detective, and we're talking about using detective skills to improve your networking, the first skill is to think like a sleuth. And this is really what we talk about, that you want to go and think like a sleuth. So you've been handed a new case, right? If you're a new detective, you've been handed a new case, and you got a room full of people, and they don't really want to talk to you. And that's really what's going on at networking events, that you don't know who to talk to. You don't know which people you don't know which people you should be talking to. And that's really what these 5 skills work with you on. It's how to figure out who you want to talk to, and then talk to them in a way that gets them talking and gets the conversation going. And then over time, you can figure out, who you want to talk to, who is a good suspect, or who's a good prospect, or even who's a good referral partner for you. And so again, the first skill is to think like a sleuth. Nancy, it looked like you wanted to break in there.
Yes, I want it because I want you to articulate before we go any further those 5 skills. And
Okay.
then we'll dig deeper, Andy, into each one individually. So
Sounds good.
please name those 5 skills.
So the 5 skills are, the first one is think like a sleuth. In the second one, we gather clues. In the third one, we just the fact. And we'll talk more about why there's just one fact that you want to be talking about. Then we want to keep them talking, because of course, if you're going to get any sort of relationship going, you have to keep talking to people. And the final skill, Nancy, is book them, and that's when you set up a one-to-one, or sign up a new client, or get a great new referral partner going. And so those are the 5 skills.
Great. And Andy, there are people out there who don't know yet who you are, let alone who I am. So do you mind giving a quick little intro as to who Andrew Winig is?
That's great, Nancy. Yes, I am Andrew Winig, and I am the elevator pitch coach. I help people start conversations in networking environments that help them get better referrals and more leads. And Nancy, I know you do something similar to me, but on the other side of things. And so why don't you give us a quick introduction of what you're doing?
Thanks. So I am Dr. Nancy Zare. I am the sales whisperer. And what I do is I help coaches and consultants generate warm, organic leads, primarily through LinkedIn, and turn them into clients. In fact, Andy, I'm able to help over 50% of prospects become new clients.
So, those are great numbers, Nancy. That's excellent.
And people may wonder why it is that the sales whisperer might be teamed up with an elevator coach in order to talk about networking. And that's because, guess what? Networking's all about selling. So let's go back over those 5 skills. What's the first one again? And let's give a little bit more depth about what that is.
So the first skill is you're going to think like a sleuth. And we talk about thinking like a sleuth. That means you're there to get to know people, right? I mean, a lot of people, I say, they make the mistake of confusing networking with networking with sales. You're like, well, how can you make that mistake? And if you've ever studied an attendance list, or if you've ever collected business cards, you're confused about that. You're confused about sales versus networking, because you can prospect at a networking event. But the bigger opportunity at the networking event is to look for other people who'd be good to connect with. They might be clients, they might be referral partners, they might give you, introduce you to someone that you really wanted to meet. So the first step is to think like a sleuth and go in with this idea that you're going to discover things. You're going to discover what's going on, discover who's available there.
Yeah, and it's important for us to look, whether you're online or in person. You know what? You don't have to jump in right away. Take a moment, scan the room, scan the Hollywood squares, look at people's name tags or the participant list. And again, there are people there that are the right prospects for you, but right now everyone's a suspect. We don't know who is the right person. So that probably leads us to the next skill.
It does. And the next skill is to gather clues. And how do you gather clues? Well, you have to ask people questions. And what's the most common question? What do you do? But we like to give people other better questions. We call them juicy questions, where you can ask really good questions that don't put people on the spot. don't feel like they're being interrogated. It just helps you open up the conversation. And that's the other thing I like to talk about when we're networking, that what we're looking for is to get to know people over time, right? You're not going to get to know everybody in the room immediately right there. And so you're going to be setting up multiple conversations. And so the idea is to start. We talk about asking good questions, to start the conversation, to start gathering clues. And Nancy, you have some ideas about gathering clues. I mean, it's partly spoken clues, but what are some of the other clues they can be looking for?
Well, of course, when you look at someone, you're gathering clues, but most of us kind of gloss over that, Andy. We don't really think about what it is we're seeing, but there are plenty of clues when you look directly at someone, because are they returning your gaze or are they looking away? How are they dressed? How are they accessorized? What kind of background do they have? Because these are clues that can give you information about who that person is and what they're like, and of course, how approachable they are. And clearly, you want to go up to the people who are the most approachable. Would you agree?
I do. The most approachable is good. And it's something that people don't realize when I talk to people about networking. The most important thing you want in someone you're going to work with, and anyone know, you want them to be responsive. If you email them and they don't email you back, they're not going to be a good connection for you. And so it's really important to kind of get that sense. I say if you're in a room of 40 people and you meet 2 or 3 people you want to connect with further, have a further conversation with, that's a pretty successful night of networking, right? I don't really expect you to meet many more that you'd want to continue the conversation with. And again, you gather clues. Nancy and I have a free we have a free program, Solve the Networking Mystery, that's coming up next Thursday. And so if this is interesting to you and you want to learn more about these skills, we're going to go into more depth and how you gather clues and the kinds of questions you can ask and what you're listening for when you ask those questions.
So the truth is, Andy, and I bet this is true for you too, I never learned how to network. I mean, here I am. I have a PhD, and I attended School of Social Work, and later got my master's and doctorate. And yet, nobody talked to me or told me or gave me any information. Never read a book. Never attended a presentation on how to network. And yet, Andy, networking is the best way to meet new people.
It is. I agree. It's the best way to meet new people. And I'm with you that I was never taught networking. And in fact, the story I tell is that I joined the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce and started networking, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And it took me 8 years to figure out the elevator pitch and networking. And what I say now is it takes me an hour to write your elevator pitch and 3 months to teach you how to network. So it certainly shouldn't take 8 years. Like, please recognize it's not an 8-year process to network. And it is, Nancy, it's such an important skill. And I actually did a networking for interns program last summer for a local financial group. And they had, college juniors in who were interested in joining the company, and they were starting to teach them how to network right there. And I love working with college juniors because their questions, they had some really basic questions. And I was like, okay, let's go back. Like, here's why we're networking. Here's why it's a really good thing for growing your book of business, those sorts of things. And it was fun to go back to basic principles. But I agree with you, Nancy. I really want everyone to learn how to network because it's not that hard. And it really improves your business. It improves your relationships. It improves everything.
I learned to network through Business Network International. I know that many people are familiar with BNI. I'm not necessarily saying that's the only place to learn to network, but it had a philosophy of giver's gain. And I remember, Andy, the first time I went to a BNI meeting, I was invited as a guest, and there were, 60, 70 people in the room because it was a visitor's day, so there were plenty of us. And of course, brought business cards, etc. People were flinging them around, etc. But that wasn't really networking. What really is networking, Andy, is what comes after the meet. After you get somebody's business card, it's sending out a connection request and setting up a time to meet with them individually. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. Yes, that was the thing I didn't understand, that 85% of networking is what happens between the networking events. If you're going to every networking event, if you schedule it and go to every single networking event, you're doing 15 to 20% of the work of networking. And that was the big thing I had to learn, that all the work happens in between. And this goes back to our second thing. You're gathering clues. You're gathering clues at the networking event. You're also gathering clues as you sit down for one-to-ones, as you sit down for coffee meetings. You're always looking to gather clues as you move forward with the process of getting to know people.
Yeah. So let's move on now to the third skill in the group of five.
Well, this is my favorite because this is really the work that I do, and we call this one just the fact. And the mistake people make with their elevator pitches, they try to bring everything and like, I do these three things, and I need words to describe them all. And we talk in the free program a little bit about why we're taught that way and why it's backwards for when we're doing business networking. But the idea is to pick one thing that you're going to talk about, right? Because we've talked about asking questions. You want to ask better questions. You also need to be able to answer the questions that are asked. And so that's what just the fact is about. It's about how you turn your decades potentially of experience into little sound bites that you've tested that work to start the conversations, right? There's so many people who, came up with 10 years ago a way to talk about their business, and they're kind of stuck. They like, I can't think of any other way to describe my business. And that's really when this program next week would be great. Like if you think I can't think of any other way, we'll come up with three for you right off the bat, right? We do that live on the call, and it's amazing. Like it feels uncomfortable a little bit with any new skill, right? But once you've started being more specific about your work, it's amazing. Like once you actually go and do it and see the kinds of conversations that start, people never go back. It's a really thing. And again, like people think it's hard to like come up with an elevator pitch, but it isn't, Nancy, right? All you're trying to do is start the conversation. If you think about kind of your best contacts now, the people that you've gotten to know over time and are your referral partners, you probably don't remember what their initial elevator pitch was, right? Which means that I'm helping you design a perfectly good throwaway line, right? But again, the goal of the line is to get the conversation started. Once the conversation started, you don't really need it anymore. And so it's critical because people don't know how to start that conversation.
That what you said is very important, and I want to emphasize and underline it, because the goal in your elevator speech is not to make a sale, so to speak, like now I've got a client that yum. No, it's to make a connection, and in essence that is a sale, right? To make a connection with that person and to sort out suspects into prospects, people who could become your clients, or referral partners, people who might share a similar audience but do different things, and hence you can actually refer back to each other. So everyone's a suspect as you scan the room, but through the questions and through your answer to their question is where you're going to turn suspects into prospects and referral partners. So yes, you've got to have a memorable elevator speech, memorable in the sense that, especially when you're going like Hollywood Squares, or you go around the circle in an in-person meeting, it's person after person after person. You need to say something that will catch the ear and catch the attention so that person wants to meet you and says, Andy, you're an elevator coach. I've been struggling to find how to introduce myself. And that is that little morsel, that sound bite, like you call it, that's going to capture attention and make the sale.
And I want to take that one step further, Nancy, because everyone worries about, being unique and being memorable. And what you really want to be memorable on is that when somebody meets a good referral for you or someone who'd be good for you to meet, you want them to send them to you. So it's not necessarily that you want to catch the attention of them now in the moment, but you want to get in their head that over time, as they meet people, like if they meet a consultant who's struggling to talk about their niche, like that's a really good referral for me. So over time, people hear that and get better and better at it. So it's not being memorable in the, oh, that was a great elevator pitch kind of thing. It's being memorable in, oh, you have this problem. Andy or Nancy is the person who can help you with that.
And I usually think of it, Andy, as a knee-jerk reaction. And I'm going to share an example that was from my BNI chapter. We had an estate planning attorney. And, if you're in Massachusetts or California or New York, guess what? There are plenty, or Florida, where I now live, plenty of estate planning attorneys. But this particular fellow introduced himself as doing pet trusts. Now, pet trust isn't initially something that I knew anything about, but he made it clear that when an owner deceased of say an owner of a horse. Now, horses have a long lifespan, 20, 40 years or so. And so when an owner deceased, the family couldn't immediately take in that horse. It was a big responsibility, unlike a dog or a cat. Hence, there had to be a trust that would provide for that animal's upkeep in the long term and not depend upon a family member to take care of it. And I tell you, Andy, anytime I met somebody who breathed the word horse, I thought of Peter. And so it's that kind of memorability that you're trying to create in your listeners' ears.
Right. And if I'd been coaching him, I would have had him say, I do horse trusts, not pet trusts, right? Because I was trying to figure out like what the cat dog thing was, but the horse, I do trusts for horses, like that makes sense. And you're right. Then when you hear horse, you think about this guy. And that's, and that's the fun part about this too, Nancy, that as you get more specific about who you're looking for, and right, he doesn't just do trusts for horses, right? He'll do other pets and he'll do people. And I mean, he does everything. And that's the thing people don't understand, that when you're specific, you're starting the conversation. And once you start the conversation, then they can learn more about you. But if you don't start the conversation, you never get there. Right. And so that's really the thing we're talking about with just the fact. Like, again, that's a great example of that. He talked about doing horse trusts. And that's what sticks in people's heads, and that's what they remember, because it's a little bit unusual. And when you meet someone and they mention their horse, you know that they're a good prospect. And so that's really the thing that we're looking for. We're looking for that thing that helps. And then, he could partner with Barnes. I mean, there's all sorts of places he can go now that he's doing that to build this part of his business. And that's the other side effect of this, that when you really get specific, when you get over your fear that you're not going to gather the largest group of people, right, and you start focusing on something, if he becomes known as the guy you call for a horse trust, his business is going to take off, right? And he'll still be doing other trusts, but it's good to have that kind of expertise. And, he didn't need to sit and think about it. Like, I do horse trusts.
Yeah. Great. There you go.
Good example. Thanks, Nancy.
And so what's our fourth skill that we need to develop?
The fourth skill is to keep them talking. And what we do here is we want to make sure it doesn't feel like an interrogation, right? Question, 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 question. You can feel like you're under the spotlight. And if you think about the detectives like Columbo, for example, like you never knew that he thought you were a suspect, right? The people that thought they got away with it, they thought they talked to him just fine. And then he would, just slide a question in at the end and everything would be revealed. And so that's really what, when you keep them talking, Nancy has this great technique that we'll talk about, next week when we do the free program, but a great technique for making it obvious that you're listening, right? They talk about something, and then you can ask a question that uses this technique that really keeps the conversation going, shows them that you were listening, shows them that you're thinking about them, shows them that you can really keep their interests at heart. And that's how you start building the relationships, right? I like to say to people, there's nothing you can say in 30 seconds. There's nothing you can say in 30 minutes. There's nothing you can say in 45 minutes that people are going to know everything about you. And so you're looking for people who you want to keep talking to. And that's a lot of what we work on, is what does the second conversation look like? What does the third conversation look like? There's one guy that he and I started team teaching after our 12th one-to-one. It took years, right? It took years for us to get to the point that we wanted to teach together. But that's the work, right? That's the work of networking. And we did some really cool stuff together. Yeah. And it's not quick. Like it's not if you're looking for today's sales, you want a cold call. But if you want to kind of build up that network so that you have other work, so you have other people sending you referrals, this is the way.
And actually, Andy, that's characteristic of our relationship, because I believe we met maybe a decade ago, again, through networking. First time I met Andy, I had no interest in him, honestly. I think it was maybe the second, third, fourth time that I bought your book. And the book's name is?
The Elevator Pitch Handbook. Pitch Handbook.
It's still available. In fact, I gifted it to a client recently. So, there's a great book that will give you some of the fundamentals for your elevator pitch. But yes, relationships develop over time. And each time you set an appointment, you're making a sale, which brings us to our fifth skill, which is a book 'em, Dana.
Book 'em. That's right. And it's the kind of thing, like, sales has kind of become a dirty word. But what I like about Nancy's work is that everything is a sale. And I actually figured this out when I was starting. I owned a window cleaning business for years, a franchise window cleaning business. And as I was getting started with it, I realized that selling the window cleaning was going to be the least sales effort that I was going to put in. I needed to convince window cleaners to come work for me. I needed to convince managers to go for the goals of the year. I needed to convince my parents that owning a window cleaning business was a good next step for me. Like there were a lot of sales going on. And Nancy, I love that you talk about everything being a sale, right? Getting someone to have a one-to-one with you, that's a sale. Getting someone to be a referral partner, that's a sale. And, getting clients on board is definitely a sale, but But again, from the detective point of view, when you think about each of these stages, at each stage, you're looking for something to go forward, and you might not be, right? I mean, again, 80% of the people that you meet, you're not going to talk to again, right? You meet them, you have a nice conversation, you move on. But the folks that you do want to get to know better, you book them into an appointment, and that's where all the magic happens. We talked earlier about how it's not just being at the networking event; it's being in between the networking events. You got to get to know people, and when you sit down with people, that's when all your stuff can shine, and that's when you actually come up with the ideas for how to. I have gotten referrals at networking events, but it's all from people who I'd already had one-to-ones with.
Yeah. If there's one thing I can leave you with as you're listening, and it is that you have to be consistent. Yes, you need these skills and you have to apply them consistently. To go to one networking meeting and, to pounce on people and leave your business card, or, you're part of the directory of members who attended, that isn't going to get you anywhere. You have to return, and you have to, as Andy said, 85% of what goes on in networking needs to go on individually back at the ranch where you have one-to-one conversations. Get into that squad room and, talk to each other.
Exactly. No, I agree. I say if you're going to a one-off networking event, that's cold calling. Like, that's not networking.
Yeah,
it's cold calling. And the problem with cold calling at a networking event is people aren't expecting it, right? I mean, if you want a cold call, go cold call, but do that in a place where people are expecting cold calls, as opposed to a place where people are expecting you to want to get to know them. Because
so, Andy, we have a program next Thursday. Is it Thursday, I believe?
I'm pretty sure, yeah, Thursday the 9th.
Thursday, and again, it's a free event. It's a workshop on these 5 detective skills. And after that workshop, for those of you who are saying, you know what, I truly want to get involved, we also have an ongoing 2-day program with a bonus 3rd day. And it's all about, again, developing your elevator speech, learning these 5 networking skills to think and act like a detective. We promise you that you're going to get better results when you do that. So if you are looking for lead generation and hey, it's 2025, almost all of us are, rewinding the clock, so to speak, and starting fresh. Well, this is a good way for you to begin your networking year.
I agreed. Yeah, I hope you'll join us next week. And if you want more information, DM either of us, and we'll send you the links, and they should be we'll put them in the event thing too. But yeah, DM us if you're interested, and we look forward to helping you, right? I mean, it's again, it took me 8 years to figure this stuff out, and then it took me meeting Nancy to put it into this nice referral detective metaphor, which the more we work with it, Nancy, like the better it gets, right? It's just such a nice way of the people who've been through our program. It's such a nice way of thinking about networking. It's really can always be top of mind, and it gives you a way of approaching networking events where they're not scary or nerve-wracking or anxiety-provoking anymore, because you know what you're going to be doing. You know what you want to be saying. You know what you want to be asking. You know what you're looking for in people that you can grow your business. And so that's a really powerful program. So
we look forward to seeing you Thursday at our detective networking, solve the networking mystery. I think that's what we've called it. Yep. And we'll see you there Thursday, or we'll see you at our workshop. To your sales success, it's Dr. Nancy Zare, the Sales Whisperer, and
Andrew Winig, the Elevator Pitch Coach. Thanks a lot, everyone.